This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Pretty interesting weekend of sports action with no NFL this weekend, but we still got EPL Matchweek 23. I care that we've got some NASCAR with the Busch Light Clash at the Coliseum coming up. We're going to break down both of those today, starting with Austan Cass breaking down EPL as we get set for Matchweek 23. Then I'll finish things up by talking NASCAR out in Los Angeles. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research. Joined here to kick things off by Austan Cass. Find him on Twitter at Austan Cass. You can find his work at FanDuel Research, where he is a senior editor. Austan, happy Thursday to you. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Jim?
I am doing better, given that the recommendations you gave last week here on the show for Matchweek 22 did go well yesterday with the Liverpool money line, the over, and I think it was was it Man City, that match? We had the over there?
Over 3.5,
Yeah, so 4 total goals there. So I feel better now. So Austan is back on his hot streak. Never any doubt about that. And happy to talk about Matchweek 23 as well, which we'll do here for today. Breaking down where Austan sees value. We'll also take a look at the futures markets, get an update on Man City after that win yesterday, see where things stand on them, -140 to win. Is there value or should we look elsewhere? And then we'll talk about some matches. And then later on, I'll break down NASCAR in the Coliseum. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. First look at Super Bowl 58 between the Chiefs and the 49ers is up. That was up on Monday. Breaking down my thoughts on the total and the money line for that game. A lot of good stuff for that game coming up next week, Monday through Friday. We're talking about Super Bowl 58 here on the show. So make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us on the FanDuel YouTube page and over on FanDuel TV Plus. Now, Austan, let's begin things here by talking about the top of the table, because we have not discussed the outright winner for the EPL in a bit now. Man City is -140, followed by Liverpool 2-1. Arsenal slipping to 8-1. They were +650 prior to yesterday's action. Now, Man City is still behind the table right now, but they did get Haaland back. That's a bonus for them. Is this a good price to buy them at, or is the market pretty much spot on in your eyes?
So it's kind of a boring answer, but I think the market is very fair and pretty spot on right now. If I had to back one side, it would be Man City at -140. I think they're better, especially with, in addition to Haaland coming back, Kevin De Bruyne is coming back. I think he's probably their best player. But I think the -140 price is about spot on, and the way that Liverpool have been playing lately is very impressive. And they're also a little scary because they've got the added emotional surge of their manager leaving, and they would probably love to send him off on a high note. And then they also aren't in the Champions League this year. They're in the Europa League and will probably go pretty far in that, but they won't have the Champions League burden that Man City has. So I think you can find reasons to back both teams. And if you had just lived by the rule of anytime Man City get under like -150, the last few years, just take them, you would be doing pretty well. But yes, all in all, I think this is pretty spot on. And as a neutral, I really hope it's a good race for the rest of the year.
And it looks like it should be, because right now, Man City 5 points behind Liverpool in the table, but they have one match. They have played one fewer match as well. So important thing to consider there with that market. -140, not too bad for Man City. You kind of did predict this before the season too, that, maybe they'll get off to a slow start, stuff like that. That has manifested. But it does sound like you said, potentially some value in Man City with where things stand right now. Let's turn our attention to Matchweek 23, Austan. We have 10 matches from Saturday until Monday on the schedule. Where do you see value in the traditional markets at FanDuel Sportsbook this week?
So my favorite bet of the weekend is in that 7:30 match, the Everton-Tottenham match. And I'm not going to do a player prop and make you get up at 6:30. I like the match to go over 2.5 goals, which I believe is priced at -159. As I've said on here in the past this year, Tottenham's been the best watch in the league this year. They typically play a really open and attacking style. They create a lot of chances, but they also give up a lot of chances. Their match yesterday against Brentford was a perfect example. They won 3-2, and both teams probably feel like they should have scored more. For the year, Tottenham have accumulated the 6 most expected goals and allowed the 6 most XG by FBref's model. There's been at least 3 goals in each of their past 5 league matches, and they've allowed at least 1.3 XG in 11 of their last 12 matches. As for Everton, they're decent going forward, sitting 10th in XG created. They've totaled 19.4 expected goals in their last 11 home matches, and they've accumulated exactly 9 expected goals across their last 5 matches, and they had a really tough stretch of opponents in that time. They played Man City, Villa, Newcastle, Chelsea, and Manchester United. Another added element here is rest. Both teams played in London midweek, but Tottenham played on Wednesday night and Everton played on Tuesday, so Everton are going to have a slight rest advantage. And between the two teams, it's probably better if Tottenham's the team that's not at 100% as far as helping this get to 3 goals. And Tottenham played Wednesday night and have a quick turnaround to Saturday afternoon. I think that's a really big ask for a team that's missing some players. So the minus 159 price isn't all that fun, but I'd be willing to take this up to minus 180. Both sides have been pretty good going forward, and Tottenham's style should help this match get to 3 goals.
Does the rest factor push you away from taking an alt market to get to over 3.5 goals? Is that too big of an ask, given that both these teams did play midweek and now they're playing again Saturday morning?
Yeah, it does a little bit. I think you can make a case for it, and I looked at it, and I just thought maybe I was swinging for the fence a little too much there. Yeah. But, I think in general, I think rest probably hurts the defenses more just because when you have the ball and you have a chance to score, you're probably going to find the energy to make that happen. Right. But, that's a great question. But overall, I'd rather just take the minus 159.
Okay, so that is on over 2.5 goals for Everton versus Tottenham on Saturday morning, at least here in the U.S. It's in the morning for that one. Minus 159, over 2.5 goals there. Which other traditional markets stand out to you, Austin, for this weekend?
I'm going to stick with Saturday, and I'm going to take the Brighton money line at minus 150 against Crystal Palace. I really like Brighton in this matchup, and I was pretty torn on what's the best way to get exposure to them, either that money line or Brighton to go over 1.5 goals, which is minus 156. So while I might end up taking both, I lean more toward the money line. If you look at the match logs, you're really not going to like what you see with Brighton. They're coming off their worst outing of the season, the 4-0 loss at Luton Town midweek. They haven't scored in any of their past 3 matches. And there's no way to spin the 4-0 loss into anything but a really ugly performance, but they've still been creating chances of late. They put up 4.2 XG over those last 3 matches. So despite not scoring, they've still been giving themselves chances to score. And since De Zerbi, their manager, came in last year, they've been one of the best attacking sides in the league. And this is a really good bounce back spot for them on an XG differential. Brighton are 8th, Palace are 14th. Over their last 3 road matches, Palace have allowed 5 goals at Arsenal, 2 at Chelsea, and 2 at Man City. It's obviously a really tough stretch schedule-wise, but in terms of XG created this campaign, Brighton aren't too far behind those 3 teams. And Palace just conceded 2 goals at home to Sheffield United. What pushes me toward the money line really is that Crystal Palace's 2 best players, Michael Olise and Eberiche Eze, who were amazing Tuesday night, they both came off and looked a little bit worse for the wear and a little dinged up. And if either of them had to miss this matchup, that would be a huge blow for Palace. They are by far the 2 best players for the Eagles. So that's kind of what pushes me toward the money line more than Brighton over 1.5 goals. So I think Brighton are going to create chances. And even if Palace have those 2 guys, I like Brighton to get the win.
So how much of that injury ambiguity do you think is baked into this price already? Because if it's not baked in, there's a chance we could get some good movement in our favor, incentivizing us to lock in this bet right now. Versus if you think it's already baked in, we could wait, see if they play on Saturday and maybe get a better price if they were to play. So basically, do you think those injuries are already baked into this number at minus 150?
So obviously the books are really smart, but I first looked at this line when Brighton were getting smashed at Luton Town, and I thought, who do they play next? And I saw their minus 150, so it was the same price. I think that Eze's probably fine. He just looked tired, and Olise both. They really carried him that match. It was incredible. I've never seen 2 guys just single-handedly win a game like that, but Olise struggled with injuries this year off and on, and he just looked completely gassed. And with a quick turnaround, I could see him maybe being used as a sub.
Okay, so Brighton money line minus 150 does sound like a bet we'd be better locking in now versus waiting to see what the lineups look like on a Saturday. So the two traditional market props or bets we have for this week are going to be Brighton minus 150 money line over Crystal Palace, and then the Tottenham Everton match to go over 2.5 goals minus 159. Any player props stand out to you across Matchweek 23?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Newcastle, our favorite team
Love
here
it.
at the show. We stayed away from them lately because they've really been struggling, but it's mostly been injuries and fatigue. They had a lot of rest before their last match at Aston Villa midweek. And Villa hadn't gotten beaten home at all year, hadn't lost at home all year, sorry. And Newcastle came in and just smacked them 3-1, played fantastic, looked like the Newcastle of the last 2 years. I think they'll keep it going against Luton Town, and obviously they're huge minus 250 favorites. They're minus 245 to go over 1.5 goals. So that pushes me toward their goal or assist market, which I'm just a huge fan of that market in general. And I like Anthony Gordon. He's minus 120 to score or assist. He's got 7 goals and 5 assists this season and is one of their key attacking players and creative players. So I really like Newcastle to score a couple goals in that match. And of all the attacking options for him, I think Gordon's price is the one I like best.
Now, when we're talking about some markets, we can see some differentiation from one venue to another. Like for tackle props, Ryan Noonan of Forrest talked about how some scorekeepers are more likely to give an assist on a tackle than you'd see some other spots. Same thing kind of with the NBA and scorekeeping there. Do assist numbers vary from one place to another, or is that kind of regulated by the EPL? Is it easy enough to tell where you're going to get it regardless, or do we need to account for potential scorekeepers with markets that do factor in the assist?
That's a good question. By my understanding, it's like regulated by the league, and it's not like baseball where there's like a hometown scorer who may, side with the hometown team. So, yeah, but good question though.
Okay, just making sure. Got to check all the bases before we get fully into all of this. So Anthony Gordon minus 120 to score or assist. That is for the Newcastle versus Luton Town match coming up this weekend. That is Austan Cass. Make sure you check him out on Twitter at Austan Cass. Find his fantastic work over at FanDuel Research as well. Austan, I appreciate the time as always. Good luck to you. Enjoy this weekend, and we'll talk to you once again in the very near future.
Sounds good. Thank you, CJ.
Alrighty. Again, find Austan on Twitter at Austan Cass. As mentioned, we're going to talk about some NASCAR and the Busch Light Clash at the Coliseum coming up next. But first, happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate, and be sure to celebrate at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday, it's all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some bets. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers, join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, and Vermont. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WIN in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700. Visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland, 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's dig in now to this weekend's NASCAR race. It is the first race of the year, an exhibition event where they run around the LA Coliseum. It's a custom-built track. They've done this now 2 years. This will be the third year. And I was watching back to last year's race, and it's good to get a reminder of just how unruly this race is, where you get a lot of bumping because it's so hard to pass with a short track like this. You effectively need to bump a guy in order to get past them in the corner. So it's pretty interesting overall, but also not super easy to predict. So I do see value this week in my numbers, but what I'm going to do is take my traditional bet size for a NASCAR outright at the respective odds and lower that because my confidence in that value being good value is lower than what I typically would have. It's also an important race to know the house rules because only 23 out of 36 cars will advance into the main event. The only driver who is guaranteed to be in the main event is Ryan Blaney, as he is the most recent champion in NASCAR. So you got to look around at house rules and kind of know what they say. At FanDuel specifically, the house rules say, and I will read this verbatim, any drivers who do not qualify for the race will be deemed no action. That to me implies if they don't make it to the finale, that the bets will be no action. That'd be good for us as bettors. I don't know for sure if that's the case. So I'd reach out to customer support to check on that, to double check. I don't know, but I based on my interpretation of the house rules, any drivers who do not qualify for the race will be deemed no action. That to me says that they don't advance to the main event, that you would effectively get refunded. Again, I'm not speaking on behalf of them because I don't know. I'm just reading this from the house rules at FanDuel.com. I'd reach out to customer support if you have questions on that to clarify, because it actually does matter quite a bit. And also, if you're betting somewhere else, just be sure you know how things operate there, because it does differ from one book to another. Some books will say if you attempt to qualify, the bet stands. So advantage goes to sportsbook, where the house rules say you get your bet back and they don't qualify for the main event. So keep that in mind when you're looking around at different odds, and be sure to know house rules for every book just in general, but specifically for this weekend, it's more important than it is at for other races. So let's take a look here at the odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook for this race. Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Larson, co-favorites for this race at 9-1. And I do show value on both Larson at 9-1 and Denny Hamlin at 10-1. Those numbers are pretty short for a volatile race, but those two guys are both really good, and they've had at least some level of success in the Clash before. Larson is the favorite to win straight up by my model, but because Hamlin's odds are longer, I am going to wind up riding with him as my one true bet I want to lock in at this point for the Clash. Last year, Hamlin was really good during the Clash. He was fast in practice and qualifying, won his heat race, and started up towards the front, but then got spun during the race. And with the way that this track sets up, it is really tough to make your way forward if you get spun during the race and make up that ground. He did eventually get back up to 9th, passed a couple of guys in the last lap. He was able to pass a bit, at least to the extent that you can on this track. Hamlin was not good the year before that, whereas Larson has been at least fine both years. Larson started towards the back last year, but did work his way up to 5th by the end of the race, so he was able to pass 2. Hamlin, very good on the short flat tracks last year. He had a couple of podiums. He had a top 6 average running position in 3 other races. So a top 10 mark in all 7 races on short flat tracks, a top 6 mark in 5 out of 7, 2 podium finishes. And Hamlin, and I think this actually does matter for this week, is okay playing the bad guy. I think he'd be okay dumping someone if it allowed him to win this race. I do think that helps, specifically for this race, just because of the way things break down, how necessary bumping is. I think that actually does matter. Like, I love Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney hasn't always been the most aggressive driver as far as bumping guys out of the way. So his 2 years in the Clash haven't been phenomenal. So I actually do kind of care about that for this week. That's the one bet I'm okay locking in right now before we get non-outright markets up. And I'm honestly not positive we will get non-outright markets up for this race, given the way it breaks down and stuff like that. So I'm okay with Denny Hamlin 10-1 being the one Clash bet I have for early on this week. The other guy I did consider was Daniel Suarez at 80-1. It's a pretty long number, and Suarez was good at the start of 2022 in the Clash, pretty good in practice, but he had issues during the race. And then last year, Suarez didn't do a whole lot to move the needle. That's a big part of why I'm not going to lock him in now, despite the fact this is 80-1. I know that number could shorten, but I think that's an okay risk for me. I'd rather wait and maybe get a worse number later than take a potentially dead number right now. But Suarez will be running the NASCAR Mexico Series race earlier on that day. So he's going to have more track time than other drivers this weekend. And my simulations, which don't know about the Mexico Series race, do actually have Suarez above his implied odds at 1.2%. So I want to see something out of Suarez on Saturday. That would mean his odds would shorten because obviously that stuff will be accounted for by bettors and by sports books. But I'm okay allowing this number to shorten on me if it gives me more confidence that Suarez has a good feel for the track at that time. If he were to shorten to something like 25-1, I'd probably be out then. I can't see my model getting in the 4% range with where it's currently at. But if Suarez does remain a long shot, even if he does shorten a bit from where he's at, I'd be okay giving him consideration if he can run well on Saturday. If I do like Suarez as a bet to win this race after that information, it'll be up in the NASCAR betting guide over at FanDuel Research. So go to FanDuel.com/research, look for the NASCAR betting guide for the Clash of the Coliseum. You can go to the NASCAR page at FanDuel Research to find that. I'll update that in the morning on Sunday once we get updated odds, if there's someone who catches my attention at where things reopen later on. So no Suarez for now, sticking with just Hamlin, but we'll keep my eye on Suarez to see if we can get a potentially good number at some point during the day on Sunday. That's all we got here for today here on Covering the Spread. Big thank you once again to Austan Cass for joining us. You can find Austan on Twitter at Austan Cass. Check out his work over at FanDuel Research. I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can find me on Threads at Jim.Sonis, and check out FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. Tomorrow we are back here. We're going to talk some UFC and talk NHL futures at the All-Star break by talking to Austin Swaim, which should be a whole lot of fun. We'll talk to all of you then. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.